The night witches, female Soviet pilots who terrified Nazis. The sound that made hardened soldiers tremble. Picture this. It's 2 a.m. on the Eastern Front, 1943. German soldiers huddle in their trenches, exhausted from another brutal day of warfare. Suddenly someone hears it. A sound like wind whistling through fabric, like a witch's broomstick cutting through the night sky. Then silence. Then explosions. By the time the soldiers scramble for cover, it's too late. The bombs have already fallen and their mysterious attackers have vanished into the darkness like ghosts. The Germans had a name for these phantom warriors, Nachthexen, the night witches. But here's what will blow your mind. These feared pilots were Soviet women, most barely out of their teens, flying planes so outdated they were made of plywood and canvas, and they became one of the most effective and terrifying units in World War II. The woman who refused to take no for an answer. Our story begins with Marina Raskova, a celebrity aviator who was essentially the Soviet Union's version of Amelia Earhart. When Nazi Germany launched Operation Barbarossa in June 1941, invading the Soviet Union with over 3 million troops, Raskova received thousands of letters from women begging to serve as combat pilots. The Soviet Air Force repeatedly rejected them. Women could be nurses, radio operators, mechanics perhaps, but combat pilots? Impossible. Raskova did something extraordinary. She went directly to Joseph Stalin himself. Think about that for a moment. In Stalin's Soviet Union, where millions disappeared into gulags for far less, this woman marched into the Kremlin and demanded the right for women to fight. And somehow, impossibly, Stalin agreed. In October 1941, he issued Order Number 099, authorizing the formation of 3 all-female Air Force units. The 588th Night Bomber Regiment was born. These women would fly missions that male pilots considered suicidal, flying coffins and calculated madness. Here's where the story gets absolutely insane. The aircraft they were given, the Polikarpov PO-2 biplane, was designed in 1928 as a crop duster and training plane. It had a maximum speed of just 94 millimeters, slower than a modern highway speed limit. The open cockpit meant pilots flew in temperatures that dropped to -40 degrees. There were no radios, no radar, no parachutes. They were too heavy, and definitely no enclosed cockpits or heating. The planes were so slow they couldn't even carry heavy bombs. Each aircraft held only 2 bombs weighing 100 kilograms each. To cause significant damage, they'd need to make multiple runs, sometimes 15 to 18 missions in a single night, taking off, dropping bombs, landing to reload, and taking off again, over and over until dawn. But here's the genius. These flying coffins were actually perfectly suited for a terrifying tactic. The PO-2's slow speed meant it flew beneath the stall speed of German fighter planes. Messerschmitts couldn't fly slow enough to shoot them down without falling out of the sky themselves. The planes were too small and slow to show up effectively on radar, and because they were made of wood and fabric, they were nearly invisible at night. The broomstick maneuver. The night witches developed a technique so audacious it seems pulled from fiction. They would fly in groups of 3. 2 planes would fly to the target as decoys, deliberately drawing searchlight beams and anti-aircraft fire. While the Germans were distracted, the 3rd plane would cut its engine. Yes, you read that right. They would shut off their engine mid-flight. In the sudden silence, the plane would glide toward the target, the only sound being that eerie whistling of wind through the wings. The Germans called it the night witch's broomstick. At the last possible moment, the pilot would drop the bombs, restart the engine, and disappear into the darkness before the German gunners could even locate them. Then they'd rotate positions and do it again, and again, and again. Imagine being a German soldier. You hear the engine, then it stops. You're standing in darkness, searching the sky, knowing bombs are silently falling toward you but having no idea from where. Then the explosions come. Some historians argue this psychological warfare was as devastating as the physical damage. 23,000 tons of terror. Over the course of the war, these women flew over 23,000 combat missions, more than 30,000 according to some sources, and dropped approximately 23,000 tons of bombs on Nazi targets. They destroyed 17 river crossings, 9 trains, 2 railway stations, 26 warehouses, 12 fuel depots, 176 armored cars, 86 firing points, and damaged dozens more. But the statistics barely capture the reality of what they endured. Each night, pilots and navigators would climb into their freezing, fabric-covered planes, often without even basic survival gear, and fly into walls of anti-aircraft fire. The planes had no armor plating whatsoever. A single bullet through the canvas could send them plummeting to Earth. Every mission was a calculated gamble with death. The ace who became a legend. Nadezhda Popova flew 852 missions. 852 times she took off into the night knowing she might not return. Her plane was shot down multiple times. She flew through exploding shells that ripped holes in her wings. Once, shrapnel from a German shell embedded in her map, which she kept as a souvenir. She was 19 years old when she started. Or consider Irina Sabrova, who completed 1,008 missions, the most of any night witch. That's over 1,000 times facing death at close range. Or Yekaterina Ryabova and Nadezhda Popova, who flew together for years, becoming one of the most successful pilot-navigator teams of the war. Then there was Yevdokia Bershanskaya, the regiment's commander for nearly the entire war, who kept these missions going night after night, juggling the impossible logistics of maintaining ancient planes while sending young women into combat. 32 of these women would die in combat, but 23 would receive the Soviet Union's highest honor, Hero of the Soviet Union. The Ghost Regiment's final flight. Here's what makes their story even more remarkable. After the war, they were largely forgotten. When Victory Day parades marched through Moscow, when medals were distributed and stories were told, the night witches faded into obscurity. Male veterans sometimes refused to acknowledge them. Official histories downplayed their achievements. For decades, their story was relegated to footnotes. The Nazis, ironically, gave them more respect than their own country initially did. Any German pilot who shot down a night witch was automatically awarded an Iron Cross, the same honor given for shooting down a far more dangerous heavy bomber. The Germans knew what the Soviet propaganda machine sometimes forgot. These women were legitimately terrifying opponents. It wasn't until the Soviet Union began to collapse, when historians started uncovering suppressed records and interviewing aging veterans, that the full scope of their achievement became clear. These weren't just women who flew missions. They were elite warriors who operated with a level of courage and skill that would be extraordinary in any context. Why this story matters now. The night witches challenge everything we think we know about warfare, gender, and capability under pressure. They flew machines that shouldn't have been in combat, used tactics that seemed suicidal, and operated in conditions that would ground modern aircraft. They were teenagers and women in their 20s, fighting a war machine that had conquered most of Europe. And they won. Every single night for 3 years, over 1,000 nights, they took off into the darkness. They flew through searchlights and flak, through mechanical failures and sub-zero temperatures, through fear and exhaustion. They revolutionized night bombing tactics. They terrorized one of history's most formidable military forces. And they did it in crop dusters made of plywood. The next time someone tells you what's impossible, remember the night witches. Remember that what looks like a disadvantage, slow planes, minimal equipment being underestimated, can become your greatest weapon. Remember that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's climbing into that canvas cockpit for the 852nd time. Remember the sound of a broomstick cutting through the night sky. Remember the witches who refused to be grounded.